The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for hanging out. Welcome to Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing all right. A day for defense and a lot of thoughts here from Coach Knighton, MJ Sherman, Blaise Gunderson, Natch Hudmacher, and yes, Mr. White. Yes, science. We'll get to all of it. And you're welcome to join the show at 489-1240, 489-1240. And can also send an email, Chris at hailvarsity.com, 800-825-5865, toll free across the state. You want to jump in wherever you hear us on the radio. And the video stream up for you at the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Can comment and watch that way, or the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Facebook and Twitter also with home flagship station KFOR. We are loaded up. We'll spend time with Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch back with us in about 15 minutes. In hour two, Mr. Blackshirt on a Tuesday, Charlie McBride. Get his reaction to Coach White and where this defense can go. We'll spend some more time on the offensive line with a Husker offensive line. Great from the pipeline. Excited to spend some time with Joel Wilks, offensive guard, led the team in pancakes in '94. Just a tough SOB. I say that lovingly, and anxious to get his take on what he projects from the offensive line. Let's get to it. Can find us also on Twitter at Schmidt_radio. Give me a follow. Give Elijah a follow. Elijah Herbel at Herbal Essence is where you go. So we'll have some comments here in a moment from Tony White and this Nebraska defense. But Elijah, a lot's been talked about, and I want to go into a couple of talking points you and I can beat up for a little bit. The mantra of 1% better, right? You hear that. It's a great phrase. It's a better mentality, the 1% better. And then also another thing that's been a topic of conversation has been just the body change. We noticed it and talked about it with Ethan Piper last week. You saw it with Ty Robinson yesterday. Blaise Gunderson looks all sorts of yoked up. Natch Hudmacher looking different. And the reason being is in the name of athleticism. You can be tough, you can be strong, you can be super physical, but you see it on the offensive line and the defensive line. There is that sweet spot where you need size and strength, but you also, to be better from a mobility standpoint and an athleticism standpoint, you take some of the good, what I call it, Wing Tuesday, table fat or table weight, and you flip it around. That's been a giant emphasis when it comes to strength and nutrition with some of Rule's staff. Coach Corey, of course, with his workout program, the nutritionist that Nebraska has now, you're seeing kind of lean and mean. That's been the shift versus big and bulky, and that'll be a difference. And when I think of those body types, I think of the Boses of the world, right? Just huge, but there's not an ounce of fat on the guy. Back when he was rolling up folks at Ohio State or now off to the NFL, I look at the Wistroms and the Peters. Those guys were not just big, crazy dudes on the line, Tomich, but they were also in shape, fast, athletic guys. They were mobile, and it's all in the name of speed and being able to be different that way. Yeah, you need to still be strong and physical and take up space, but go make some of those aggressive plays. And with changing your body and being a little bit more mobile, athletic, flexible, that could be a difference for this Nebraska defense. It's no longer just great to be able to stalemate at the line of scrimmage and let your linebackers or some of your other athletes clean up. It's now the onus on, hey, let's be aggressive if you're a Nebraska defender in that front and go make a play yourself, because you're able to get around a guy that may be a half step too slow because you've changed your body.
Well, look at just some of the top edge guys, and there's a difference between, I think, like your nose guard and your defensive tackle position and what you have on the edge, because like Pot Roast is a guy that he got the nickname Pot Roast for a reason. He still made a long NFL career out of it. I'm not saying he was immobile on the inside. He was fantastically mobile for his size. Yeah. You'd never expect a guy that big to be able to move like that, but you have less Vince Wilforks in the NFL nowadays. That's how the game is moving. Look at the top edge rushers in the NFL right now. 10, 15 years ago, these guys are playing linebacker. And that's kind of the shift, is that edge rusher position is really another linebacker on the field. And you look at, I mean, who are the top guys right now? TJ Watt, even Aiden Hutchinson, smaller than a defensive end would be 10 years ago. Von Miller, Nick Bosa, I mean, among the top edge rushers, I was going to go to Myles Garrett as being probably the guy who's the largest, and even compared to a defensive end of yesteryear, he's pretty small compared to those guys. Whenever you think about your 290-pound monsters, your Neil Smiths of yesteryear.
And even Neil, though, I mean, Neil was cut and fast and explosive and had that twitch. Mm-hmm. So you need that speed to go with size. And you also like the measurements. You like the longer arms, the ability to get off blocks, and just have an advantage physically, not only mentally, but that 1% goes into the mentality, and then the physical work to reshape the bodies has been big time. And again, we draw parallels. We talked with Trev Alberts about this, but it does sound a lot like just kind of a back to the 90s, at least from a speed and a makeup and just the emphasis on health and nutrition.
It's back to the 90s, but with a modern twist.
Yes, very fair.
With a modern twist. Whenever I think about that group, like, yeah, you saw some changes in how the body composition is. Is that going to translate to the field? I guess we're going to wait and see, Schmidt. It's going to be one of those things where you're not going to know until Minnesota trots out there on August 31st, because Minnesota, as we've talked about a lot, they have some inexperienced offensive linemen in the room, but guys that have played a lot of football, if that makes sense. They have giants that have been in the program for 3-4 years now, been getting that time to develop. You've been slow cooking them like a brisket, if you will. Can't microwave those groups. It's time for them to show what they've got, and they're going to be going up against a Nebraska defensive line that's going to look a lot different than it did last year based on what we've seen early in fall camp. But is that able to translate? Do you have enough beef still to be able to stand up those Big Ten offensive linemen? These are questions that remain to be seen, but Tony White and Coach Matt Rule, the strength and conditioning coach, clearly have a vision. They got into that today in the presser with essentially saying that Tony White sat down with the strength and conditioning staff this offseason and said what he wanted from the defensive line. He thinks they did a great job going on executing that vision in terms of what he wants from his defensive linemen. Will it pay dividends once Big Ten season rolls around? We'll see. But it seems to be a defensive line in a group that fits the vision of what the 3-3-5 is supposed to be, just a little bit better in terms of mobile defensive linemen. They're stunting all over. They're really trying to wreak some havoc on an offensive line.
Well, and if you're always moving, a moving target, hard to hit, hard to lock in on, and you can be faster to a spot than the guy trying to block you. There's nothing wrong with that, and we'll see how well it works out. Let's hear from Tony White as his focus as we get things kicked off on the start of fall camp. What's the direction of this defense?
I mean, right now we're just trying to concentrate on the operation, that we know what to do, we know what our identity is, and whether it's individual walkthrough or whether it's full team competition, we know how we're supposed to act. And so far it's been good, but we still got a long way to go.
That identity, I mean, this, to me, the identity is very simple with this defense. Be fast and physical. I mean, just absolutely get to your spot, go make a play, and be flying around the football. To that point, more from Coach White here on playing fast.
We're harping on the guys for going fast. You know, we had an incident where a guy was trying to be too correct versus playing fast. And so I yelled at him because, hey, dude, I'm not worried about that right now. I just care that you let loose and you go and you play with, I'm going to keep on saying this, Husker speed. That's the way we're going to play her. Husker speed, full go, full tilt. I'm not worried about making a mistake, and I want to play my butt off.
That sounds big time, because if you make, Coach McBride will be with us, and he has said it for a lot of years on this show. Just even if you make a mistake, do it fast, because you're going to get a reaction, a mistake, some uncertainty from the offense if they're trying to track you down. You may not nail the assignment, but getting that old car wreck on the way to the ball carrier.
Well, it's something that he said plenty with what his focus was, the defensive line stopping the run. You're going to play the run on the way to the quarterback, which is the ultimate definition of playing fast from a defensive lineman point of view. And that your main goal every single time you get off the ball is to get off the quarterback. And if you see a ball carrier during that time, you get off your block and you make a play. But it's not about reading and reacting and seeing, is it going to be a run play first? Is it going to be a pass play here? We're going to stand my offensive lineman up and then we're going to make a decision. And you know what? If it's a pass play, we're going to get after the quarterback. No, it's not that. Like what Coach McBride harped with his defensive line was, we're going to get to the quarterback, and if it's a run play, if they happen to run the ball against us, we're going to stop that ball carrier on our way to the quarterback, but that's not going to be your focus whenever you get off the football.
You can read and react, very common for defenses, or you can attack. And Nebraska has bought into this attacking defense. Those are fun to watch if they play at a high level. They're absolutely fun to play in when you're having success. Let's get a little bit more from Tony White when it comes to guys reshaping their bodies to that athleticism standpoint. Cut 4 here, and a lot of work and emphasis has been put in there by this football team, by this side of the ball.
I think that is truly what represents the process and what Coach Rules has brought here. You know, you talk about a guy like Buck. You know, we identified, hey, he needs to be closer to this weight. That's Corey, that's the Kristen in the nutrition, that's Mitch over at the sports science, that's everybody included, constantly giving him the resources he needed in order to get himself in the best shape he's been in. He's flying around, he's happy, he's being a leader out there. I'm really, really excited for what he's been able to do, and that's representative of what's here now.
That's a name that we all were pretty excited about, Roquan Buckley, when he came to Nebraska out of Michigan. It was a fight in the recruiting world to get him. He's been here for a little bit. Elijah, it sounds like he's doing things at a pretty high level. We're 2 days into practice, but even you go back to spring, and Buckley's a guy that you've kind of been waiting to pop. Sounds like he's making headway. He's playing with confidence. He's in a really good headspace right now. And the more the merrier for me on that defensive line, because Nebraska wants to rotate to be able to have that advantage and continue to pressure an offense.
And you can see how his body has been reshaped this offseason whenever he gets out there. He came in at 6'6", 280 plus pounds.
It's 280-ish, yeah.
Which is huge as a defensive line. That's offensive lineman numbers for a high schooler coming out. So for them to say, you know what, he had a little bit too much weight on him, we're going to try to get him fast and flying around. Well, again, will it pay off? I don't know yet. We haven't seen a Roquan Buckley that looks like that during his Nebraska career, but you're excited about what the possibilities could be because what he's been during his time at Nebraska thus far clearly hasn't gotten him time on the field. It hasn't been what's been right for him in his development. So try something new, and it sounds like the coaching staff, from what we just heard from Tony White, is excited with what he can be moving forward. And it was the last little point that Coach White made there. That's just one guy that represents the whole shift of what this defense has been this offseason. We see that whenever guys like Ty Robinson get up in front of the media yesterday, or Nash Hutmacher. These guys do look a little bit different. Again, my question is still, does it pay off in the long run? But it's what you hope to see whenever you heard Nebraska shifting to a 3-3-5, because that's what they needed.
And how soon can it pop? That's the question. It's the question with any transition. How soon can you be good at it? And how much is overload? How much is the right amount? And can guys play fast with all of their responsibilities? The sweet part of this defense, if you're a Nebraska fan, is just how you can have waves coming out of the opposing offense where they're not expecting, or they don't know how to react, or it's a changeup. It's a different defense. It's a defense you're not used to. So you may not be great at trying to stymie it. Now, you need your guys to be better than functional at carrying out their assignment and go execute. More from Coach White here on the defensive backs and what he's seen from that back area.
Let's go with the importance of getting guys reps.
Okay. I misread the third base sign. You were telling me 5, not 10. 9. I need my eyes checked.
Yeah, my bad.
Let's go to reps here on Hail Varsity.
We want to win the game. Shoot, there's a ton of, and we got a lot of guys playing. It's cool to see when you look up and you see Buck out there, you see Nash, and you see Blaze, and you see Cam, then you see guys down the line, AJ Rollins and Kai, and then you see Sewell out there, and you're just like, wow, wave after wave. You're trying to get those guys to know what to do. And there's a point in practice where a guy makes a play and he did it the right way, and he used Husker speed and he used dominant contact, and it's like that was it, and you can see it in their face. They're like, that's what it feels like. We're trying to get everybody to that point.
Well done by Coach White. We'll hear from Mitch Sherman, get his impressions today of the defense in front of the mics, and we're about 30 days away as the countdown begins for Nebraska, Minnesota. We'll hear a little bit more from Coach White on prepping for the Gophers. MJ Sherman talks a little bit about his skill set and how it matches with that Jack linebacker. So plenty more out of Tuesday. We'll get to some of your comments and emails as well. And it's great to be with you. It's Hail Varsity Radio, and we're presented by Currency. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic on the way.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Charlie McBride, Joel Wilks next hour. We say hi to Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. At Mitch Sherman's where you find him on Twitter. And Mitch, good to spend time with you. Thanks for a few minutes. How are you?
I'm doing well. Schmidt, how are you?
We're good. We are good. It was good to see you in Indy. And camp is here. And yesterday was Coach Rule and some of the offensive guys today, a defensive flavor. And some of your impressions, Mitch, with first and foremost Tony White's defense and some of the skill set that guys bring to what could make this defense thrive. So far, so good through day 2?
From what we've heard, yes. They're moving fast. They're installing a lot. It's a complex scheme. I could envision a scenario where we're into September and there's a need to scale back some things. But, Tony White's going to try to get as much in as he can. He doesn't want to sell short the veteran players on this team who deserve for him and for this coaching staff to give them every opportunity that they have to win. And I think you heard that yesterday in Matt Rule's voice about the veteran players on the team and the work that they've done to really push things along through the summer. And, he talked about some of those guys being sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that quote kind of stuck with me a little bit. And I asked Tony White about it today, and, it resonates with him. It's because he's got players who feel that way at every level of his defense. Quentin Newsome in the back and Isaac Gifford, and you have Nick Henrich and Luke Reimer in the middle, and then a guy like Ty Robinson and some older players who haven't been on the field as much also up there on that defensive line, like Nash Hutmaker and Blaze Gunnerson. And we heard from both of those guys, Hutmaker and Gunnerson today, along with Ruquan Buckley and MJ Sherman, a new guy, and Ty Robinson and Nick Henrich yesterday. So a lot of the veteran players defensively have spoken, and more than that, I think what you see in those guys, especially the linemen, is some changes in how they look physically. And, it's got a lot to do with their nutritionist, Kristen Coggin. It's got a lot to do with Corey Campbell, the strength coach, and his staff. And all of the guys that I asked about it were quick to mention those two and their staffs. And then, of course, too, what Terrence Knighton, the defensive line coach, and Tony White and Matt Rule want from this defense. So, they're working on a lot of different things to get this team in a place physically and intellectually when it comes to the football side of things so that they're ready to go in 30 days. And that's a tough task. Of course, they're not going to be at their best, but it's just how close can they get to that opening the season against the Big Ten West opponent.
Mitch Sherman's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Mitch, we heard from Tony White today that essentially it's going to fall upon that veteran leadership on the defense to get the defense ready to go for Minnesota, that some of those guys out there who are another coach on the field, if you will, are really important in getting the defense as a whole ready. But I want to get your thoughts on what it's going to take for this team if they're going to exceed expectations in year one. Is that going to fall on those veterans and that veteran leadership, or is that going to fall on some of the younger guys being ahead of schedule and getting on the field earlier than expected in their Husker career? Which side of the coin are you on there in terms of how Nebraska could exceed expectations this season?
Well, I'd say both. I mean, you're not going to exceed expectations with only the veterans stepping up or with only the young players stepping up. And I don't think the young players can do it without the veterans leading the way. I don't think this is set up to be a team where you have redshirt freshmen who rise to the top and the older players fall away. It's just a small group. There's only 10 seniors on this team, and they're going to have to get contributions from the majority of that group, and not just on the field, but in the locker room and in leadership roles. And then because that group is so small, they're going to need young players. There's a bigger junior class, and then there's a big group of sophomores who have been in the program for 3 or 4 years. Some of the sophomores, well, all of them, the majority of them, I guess, would have been in college in 2020 if they've redshirted. And, that counts. That does not count as a year. So you have fourth-year sophomores, which skews the look of the roster a little bit more young than it actually is. But some of those guys feel young in the program because they haven't done as much on the field, and then there's others who seem like veterans because they're entering their fourth season. So they're going to need it from all over. I definitely think you're going to need contributions from the young players if they are to go above and beyond what people expect from this team. And we saw some of those guys in the spring, especially on the defensive side. So up front on defense, at the second level on the defensive side, they're going to need young players, not just freshmen, but some of the transfers too, like MJ, who we heard from today, and Chief Borders, who I'm sure we'll hear from at some point in camp, to be big contributors for Tony White in this scheme.
Mitch Sherman with us, few minutes, Hail Varsity Radio, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Read him with The Athletic. Mitch, what do you envision for this defense? Is it going to be a defense that's led by splash plays? Are they going to be great against the run? What's a definition of success for you? And I know we've got a whole bunch of camp left to get through, but as the year goes on, I mean, you presume they'll get better. That's what needs to happen. It's a lot to ask going into Minnesota, to your point. But, what are you thinking here defensively? What can that side of the ball do for this season?
Yeah, I think definitely this defense this year and always in this scheme is going to be one that is at its best when it's causing disruption. So big plays, turnovers, splash plays, plays that get an offensive team out of its rhythm in a down and distance, a sack on second down that makes it 3rd and 17 and kills a drive, creating a penalty because of the pressure that they're showing, the looks they're showing, really just creating confusion for the offense because it's a defense that a lot of teams in the Big Ten and teams that Nebraska plays in the non-conference aren't going to be accustomed to seeing. It's going to require a lot of film study and a lot of concentration on the part of offenses to master what Nebraska's doing on defense. And I don't think that opponents will necessarily do that. On the flip side, if Nebraska's not fundamentally sound in this defense, then they're going to be susceptible to big plays. And it's not always the worst thing in the world. It's not necessarily, I don't think, with this defense all about the amount of points or the yards that they give up. Of course, you want to keep teams out of the end zone, and that's how you win the game. But it's getting teams off schedule. It's being disruptive, creating turnovers, getting sacks. That's what this defense is built around. That's why it's been successful at stops that Tony White has made, at places where his coaching mentor Rocky Long has been successful, and you see the 3-3-5 taking hold at some programs around the country that haven't traditionally run it. You saw it in the Big 12 last year at TCU and Oklahoma State. Can it work in the Big 12, in the Big 10? Yeah, I think it can. But there are going to be times where if Nebraska's not buttoned up fundamentally, then they're going to get taken advantage of. And those moments are going to happen in this defense. You just have to hope, if you're Nebraska, that the big plays, the disruptions, can cancel that out and even give you an edge.
And Mitch, we're going to get a chance to see this year how the 3-3-5 works with a couple different Big Ten teams utilizing it. Nebraska obviously being the first, the top of mind for us, but Wisconsin's going to have their own version of one, and Ohio State's going to have a version of a 3-3-5 as well. But whenever you look at this Husker defense, Mitch, how much pressure do you think is going to be on them early in the season when you look at those two big games to open with Minnesota and Colorado? You can assume, based on it being year one in a new system, that the defense is probably going to be ahead of the offense by the time that we get kicked off on August 31st. So how much pressure do you think is going to be on them to keep Minnesota out of the end zone and keep Minnesota off the scoreboard as that offense gets some things ironed out early in the year?
Yeah, a considerable amount of pressure. That's not necessarily the game that you look at going into thinking that it's going to be a 35-31 game. Minnesota is going to be methodical about the way that it does things, and it may be a defense. I think matchup-wise, looking at it 30 days out, it's not one that I love for Nebraska, because Minnesota, they're not necessarily looking to gouge you with a huge play, and they're not looking to take a ton of risks. When teams start to take risks against the defense that the kind of defense that Nebraska is going to play, that's when bad things can happen and big plays can happen for the defense. But if they're patient, and I'd expect that's what it's going to be with PJ Fleck and that offensive system. They're going to get their yards and they're going to get their first downs, and they're probably going to be able to have a chance to control the clock. Nebraska will have to find a way in that game to take some gambles and create big plays when they're not necessarily there for the taking. So I mean, we're more than 4 weeks away from it. We'll have time to break that thing down, but it's not a matchup in this scheme, especially the first time Nebraska running it out there, that I absolutely love or even like, especially on the road in the first game of a coaching regime. The second week is a different story, and I think there will be opportunities at Colorado without even having a true understanding of what Colorado is going to do on the offensive side. I think they're going to have to take risks, and they're going to look for big plays, and that should create opportunities and be right up the alley of what this defense wants to do to take advantage of an opponent. So, very early in the analysis, I think week one sets up as a much worse matchup for Nebraska than week two on the defensive side.
Mitch, here about 90 seconds, bud, but is there a defensive player that you could see as a barometer for how this defense goes?
At the very beginning, what the questions I want to ask as camp goes on and the positions that I want to watch when things get going are two spots. The rover spot, which is kind of the link between the secondary and the linebackers, and it was really interesting to hear White say today that Eric Fields, the true freshman linebacker, is playing that rover spot. He came to Nebraska as a linebacker and intends to play like a linebacker in college. I know that from visiting him in Ardmore, Oklahoma this winter. So that tells me that rover spot is going to be something that Nebraska looks at like as an extension of its linebacking core, and it's really an intriguing position. So not that Fields is going to be the starter. It's probably going to be Isaac Gifford or one of the more experienced players, but just the fact that he's playing there tells me something about that spot. And then the other one is the jack linebacker position, which between the first and second level of the defense has a lot of the same characteristics that you see for the rover spot on the back end, and that's MJ Sherman and Jamari Butler and Chief Borders and Maverick Noonan. So those are all really intriguing pieces in the Nebraska defense. Even Noonan is a true freshman. So I'm going to watch those guys at both of those positions and see how things go. If they're very active when the season gets going, and if we're hearing a lot of good reports about those two positions out of camp, then I think things are progressing, and that's a good barometer for where the Huskers are at.
Mitch, we'll get caught up again. Always appreciate you taking a few minutes. Real quick, about 10 seconds, what's coming up from you?
Well, we've been talking about defense, so I'm going to be writing about defense here in the near future. First couple of days of camp are done, and we'll kind of finish with the previews and the rundown of everything that happened on day one. So that's online right now at The Athletic. Go check that out, and more good stuff to come.
Mitch, appreciate you. Thanks for the time.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
There he is, Mitch Sherman with us from The Athletic. More Hail Varsity on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. 489-1240. 489-1240. So, We will hear from Charlie McBride here next hour and Joel Wilks, part of the pipeline going on. We got caught up. Good stuff from Mitch. Check the podcast out. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. It's where you can find the interview there. Also, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Check that out. Let's hear from different Sherman. MJ Sherman, as he caught up with the media a little bit, and a lot of good questions for MJ. Love hearing him talk. We'll get there in a moment. And I do like what Mitch said here, barometer-wise. What positions do you look at? Well, obviously, as a group, you look at the offensive line. The offense goes pretty much every season, every year, every team. What's your O-line look like? And also you're really focusing in on Sims. What does he give you at quarterback? Those are the two sides or two positions you look at on the offense. Defensively, though, wanted to hear Mitch's take on just, all right, if the defense is successful, that equals who or what having a big day. You look at some of the really talented defenses. I think back to the 1999 defense for Nebraska. You had the Mad German, Kyle Vandenbosch, Steve Warren, killing it. You had a good linebacking core. You still had Mike Brown at Rover. I mean, those were some dudes. And Mike Brown is as good as it ever got at safety / Rover for Nebraska. They were he was the leader and tackling machine. But yeah, you want to get after the quarterback. You need that edge presence. That'll be a big part of what MJ Sherman is tasked with. What type of wins can you get from a Ty Robinson from a pass rush standpoint, or Blaze Gunnerson with his athleticism and size? Yes, they're run stuffers, but also can you collapse that pocket internally? And then you figure out the Rover spot, that hybrid athleticism, not only to take the football away, but listen, you can send some heat off the edge or even up the middle with some of these different blitzes that Coach White's going to have up his sleeve, and you're SOL if you're an offense. Mm-hmm. And you're confused, and it could be a game-changing turnover. It could be a time to punt because it's third down, and your third down percentage is brutal against this defense when it's money time. And there's always somebody coming from somewhere you're not ready for, or maybe you are, but you're so concerned or nervous about it, you're a tick or two too late, and things get blown up. So Rover for sure, that jack position, important. Here is a little bit from MJ Sherman when it comes to knowledge of the scheme. He was asked about that. It's day 2, but so far, how are things getting picked up and then performed on the practice field from the playbook?
As I said, it's only day 2, so I can't really judge that right now. I can only really say that we try and get 1% better every day, and we just try and not make the same mistake.
1% better. That's the mantra. Be better the next day. So his assignment as a jack linebacker, what does that entail? What's MJ Sherman's job with this black shirt defense?
It fits pretty well. I mean, I came from a 3-4 defense, so I was always trying to be taught to rush the passer. Jamari is the same way. He was rushing the pass before the coaches got here. Noonan was a DN almost in high school. Chief was the same way at Florida. I mean, we all right. Ain't nothing to us.
So yeah, we're fine. We're going to be good. We've got the ability to get after the quarterback.
And we saw this defense last year. I mean, I know there's going to be some new faces on the defense this year, but we saw them picking up some new defensive schemes halfway through the year last year whenever Bill Bush took over as defensive coordinator. The defense was fine there, as MJ said. Yeah, there's some new things.
Play
we'll
fast.
Pick it up. Play fast. Play without fear of failure. I'm going to bring that one back. But we saw it from the defense last year. My question with this is not, are they going to be able to pick up the defense? It's a question of does this defense fit the strengths of these players? Because that's why the defense got better as the year went on last year. I think Bill Bush was able to install a defense that fit the strengths of who he had, and that's a credit to Bill Bush. Is Tony White doing the same here in fall camp? Is he building a defense for this year? Is he building a defense for the future, if you get what I'm saying? That's the question that remains, because there's some players on that defense. We saw that in the spring game. We've seen that in guys, their Husker career previous seasons. There's talent to work with on that defensive side of the ball, and that's kind of why I laid out to Mitch like how much pressure is going to be on that defense in games 1 and game 2 whenever the offense is still getting some things worked out, because typically in football you can get a defense picked up faster than you can get an offense picked up. So is that defense going to be one that is built to the strengths of the guys that it has, so that it can pick up some of the slack from the offense while they get things figured out early in the year? Because as college football changes in the past decade or so, the old adage of defense wins championships is ringing less and less true every single year. It really comes down to having a dominant offense. But when you look at a coaching staff in year one, a team in turnover, trying to get a rebuild started, you kind of look at that defense as being the one who's got to carry some of that water this season and give your offense a chance to get some of the kinks ironed out and get some of that chemistry down, because you haven't had as much time as other teams in the Big Ten to get some of those things installed for your offense. I
know what it looks like when the offense is rolling and the defense is rolling and special teams is competent. Clearly, I know what that looks like. You just haven't seen it in forever. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to have one side of the ball stronger, but you need the opposite side of the ball to your point, carry that water. And my bet this year for Nebraska football is, for the first time in a long time, you're going to see them get better as the year goes on. It's not just what does it look like, but it's also going to be in the form of wins. Now, are they going to reel off 8 in a row after a tough start? I don't know. I just know that once guys get comfortable and the season continues to progress, I do believe this coaching staff will get the team better, some of the key players better, and as a unit, they'll be able to help one another. It's not going to be A&M Nebraska circa 2010, where you got to hang on for dear life and it just falls short 9-6, or the snow game against Sparty, where it's steel chairs to the dome all the time and it's 9-6. You're going to get enough from your offense to help you out, and they'll come up in some key spots. Same with the defense, same with special teams. If you see that early on and you see it continue, because it's been problematic. You've never had equal strength offense, equal strength defense, competent to good to shot in the arm special teams, probably since 2016.
I'm with you, but in one thing I think in year one that's going to be important to know, especially early in the year, is when we talk about the Minnesota game, it's not going to be about holding them to 6 points so Nebraska's offense can put up 9. The more important factor, can you make enough plays? Can you set up the offense with a short field once or twice? Can your special teams make a play to set up the offense with a short field? Are you able to have that complementary aspect to build some confidence for that offense early in the season, early in a game? That's more what I'm looking for in the early part of the season. The 3-3-5 isn't built to be a defense that's going to shut teams out, especially not whenever you're trying to turn over a roster like Nebraska is.
We'll get to the potential of the defense from MJ Sherman. A few minutes away from Charlie McBride, Joel Wilks. Hail Varsity continues, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, 10 minutes away, Mr. Blackshirt Charlie McBride will join us, get his take on the defensive outlook for 2023. Joel Wilks, Husker standout, part of the pipeline, will hit the offensive line and talk with him in hour 2. Podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and can subscribe to Hail Varsity Radio. Do so that way, the segment you want or the entire show, to just hit play on when it's convenient for you. And always check out the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Video posted there daily. Appreciate everyone that subscribed to Hail Varsity YouTube, and also the Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. So, reminder about your friends at Dyer Law, workers' compensation. Confused about your options for workers' compensation? That claim? Put your trust in the team at Dyer Law. Help ensure that your rights are protected and you get a settlement you deserve. Call Dyer Law today, 402-393-7529, or visit Dyer today, dyer.law, to chat with a trusted professional about your workers' compensation claim. That's Dyer, Dyer.law, 402-393-7529. Last thought here from MJ Sherman when it comes to the defense and what is the potential of this black shirt crew in 2023.
Do you have a cut number?
It's towards the end. It should be right after.
I got you.
It could be very good. I mean, if we all put our heads into the game plan, we all buy into the program and our culture and everything like that, it can be very, very good. I mean, we got a whole bunch of athletes on the team. Everything just relies on discipline and effort.
Well said by MJ Sherman, and a comment too from Sherman. I lied. One more from MJ. What is Coach White like? What's impressive about him if you're playing for him under this defense?
I mean, it just impresses me in the sense where, like, everything we do, I mean, meetings on meetings on meetings on meetings. I mean, I'm already on my 5th page in my notebook right now, and I just got a brand new one. So, like, yeah, I mean, it's just that for real, just installing the plays and everything like that.
So the emphasis here is being that 1% better, taking a pin with you everywhere. They're trying to soak it all in, and a lot of time, Elijah, between now and Gopher time, but the time is now to get better and get it figured out.
Yeah, well, a lot of time, but at the same time, almost no time at all. Whenever you look at the grand scheme of what you had, I mean, you put in your work in the spring, you put in your work in the summer. Now it's go time, it's cram time. You need to be ready come August 31st. There's no redos, there's no extra time. It's that weird conundrum of, from a coaching staff point of view, what Tony White was kind of saying whenever we heard from him for a segment of, like, we're doing everything we can right now to get these guys ready for game one, because on one hand, 30 days, yeah, it's a lot of time to get things installed. But on the other hand, you're looking at Minnesota, this is a team that's had 4 years of preparation with bowl practices, with spring, with the continuity with Fleck.
The Fleck cult,
I mean, you're behind on the time there whenever you compare it to them. So on one hand, yeah, a month's a lot of time. But on the other hand, when you compare it to what your opponents have coming in on August 31st, it's not all that much time.
More time with Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, shortly. Joel Wilks, reminder, he'll join us, talk O-line, and you've got a talking point with this spring, now into fall camp mode, and they're trying to build on what did well and worked in the spring and hit the ground running with a new system and new staff. Back with you, Hour 2 continues. It's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
Voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We say hi to Mr. Blackshirt and welcome in Charlie McBride on a Tuesday. And apropos, because it's a defensive day. Coach, how are we doing? Thanks for a few minutes today.
Well, I'm doing good. I'm just, recovering from all my kids leaving. Every time I walk around the house, I'm looking for somebody. And it's just me and my wife, so now we have to get used to that.
Well, you had a house full. I'm so happy you got to see family and friends, and that's awesome. And no better time than summertime to do it. We're into day 2 of Nebraska camp, Coach, and there's a lot of excitement. There's some more thoughts on, I guess, a definition, for lack of a better word, on this Tony White defense. And the more I hear about it, the more I think of your defenses, just from an attribute standpoint, the speed, the athleticism, and just attacking. And I want to start there with, in your career and just time before and in Lincoln, just that decision to be an attacking defense. It sounds so simple. It may be an obvious answer, but I'm going to ask you the why. Why was your cup of tea having an attacking defense?
Well, one of the things is that we had a defense that didn't that was pretty basic before when I came. Ours was basic, but what I mean is there wasn't a lot of movement in the front, and there were a few little slants here and there and stuff like that. I looked at it as pretty easy to prepare for because I was on the other side of the ball for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought the biggest thing is the one, I think we played Utah one year, and that was about the first year we saw a shotgun quarterback and one back sets and stuff like that and movement. And so I felt like one of the things is common sense tells you got to have speed, you got to be able to cover people. And the one thing I didn't want to do was have about 15 different teams coming running on and off the field. And normally by the time it's over, you've had a couple of mistakes. Somebody didn't go, somebody didn't do this or that. The speed thing is if you look at a five-man front, say, for example, like the old Okies say, that's pretty much, a 3-4 defense, that type of thing. And you're actually taking out a tackle. And you have two tackles, two inside guys and two outside guys with a 4-3. That puts another speed guy on the field. And so I felt like that was one advantage to that defense, and it's a pretty easy defense to adjust to. But the thing was with speed. The reason for that being is if we had guys we had guys that were recruited in the secondary, say as strong safeties playing linebacker would be a good example. We don't have to take anybody out of the game when they go to no backs or any of that kind of stuff. Now we did have a dime nickel, we called it nickel defense, and with one man changing, which would be the Sam backer for a defensive back, so we put an extra DB in the field in certain situations. But other than that, we pretty much kept it kosher, and we tried to keep our linebackers inside because the number one thing we wanted to do was stop the run. Mm-hmm. So we played a lot of man under. And I guess you'd call it man under too deep type of thing. But the thing is I don't think people were sure what we were in because one of the big things we did was disguise our coverage and to look like other things and go. Then, of course, when the ball snapped, you go to your position. But the other thing is we fooled our linebackers. Now, there probably isn't any team that does it. Fooling the linebacker, you can see a linebacker walk in and out of the line of scrimmage sometimes, but we would might look like a straight line across and have both our linebackers outside on the line of scrimmage and our Mike backer up on the line over a guard or over the center, or it depends on what we had in the front, and stay there until the ball snapped. Now, when you do that, the quarterback doesn't have a clue if there's pressure coming. And sometimes we didn't have any pressure coming. So they made it change the play. When you get an offense to change the play, they're doing something they don't really want to do. They call a play because they want to do it, because they think that's the best thing. If you make them have to think and do it, then that's part of the deal. And we played a lot of man defense. Our guys had to play a lot of simple coverages. It's called a count defense. 1, 2, 3. I got number 1 if I'm a corner, and that's really hard to remember. And I'm a safety. I'm free. So So there were some things we tried not to do. We could change our blitzes up front with the 7-man, but we didn't want to mess with those 4 guys back there at all, if we could help it, because that's where you found they got a lot of confidence in playing. And then it was an aggressive defense. And the old saying, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. But and we did at times. That did happen. You can't expect the corner to be left out on, by himself all the time, and because somebody's going to beat him once in a while, so you have to understand that's a possibility. But you can make up for that in other ways, and but that's by putting pressure on the quarterback. You can keep those things from happening. If you can get a good pass rush all the time, and we felt like we had a chance to do that.
It's Charlie McBride with us here, Hail Varsity Radio, a Monday on a Tuesday with Coach Charlie McBride. And Coach, one of the things we heard from Tony White today when talking about his defense was that he wants guys playing fast and playing free defensively. And he said he wants to get there by getting guys a lot of reps in practice, which seems obvious, but is that the only way that you can get guys playing fast and playing, without fear of failure, if you will? Is it reps, or are there any other motivating strategies that you had during your time at Nebraska to get guys playing fast on that defense?
Well, I think a lot of that defense, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to have a little bit of the same philosophy in that they're going to be doing some disguising and things like that, and you have to have guys that can run to cover backs out of the backfield and, and be sure the personnel in the backfield. I think sometimes when we got ready, we checked to see that the quarterback, if he was a punter, would he play in high school? Is he a quarterback? Was he a quarterback? If he is, yeah, you got a chance that guy's going to throw the ball. So there's a lot of little things, you have to check on, and so you have to have everybody know that. And one of the things that you're able to do with that defense, it looks like, is you're able to do a lot of disguising and a lot of moving around. So we'll just see what happens, but you have to. You can't start out full speed. I don't mean by running full speed. I mean by throwing the whole package in there. You have to kind of go a little at a time. And that's the thing that's hard, for a new coach with a new defense, is to start from scratch kind of, and that's what they're doing, and then add a little each week and until you have maybe 4 or 5 games into the season, you feel pretty confident you got pretty much in what you want to have in. And then there's some special plays, defenses you put in week to week. But I would say that looking at that defense, there's a lot of chances to do a lot of movement around.
Charlie McBride's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, as we catch up with Mr. Blackshirt, get his thoughts on the Husker D. So, Coach, when we talk about Nebraska and this system and Coach White and the players he has, some of the names we know Ty Robinson, we know Reimer, we know Henrich, we know Polar Bear, some of the guys that have been in the program a while that have reshaped their body, they're chomping to go. And then you've got some portal guys. You've got a guy like MJ Sherman that's going to be a guy off the edge in that jack linebacker position. Rover is going to be key as well, and you had a great one in Mike Brown. Tell me a little bit about how good you think the defense can be, and also the reality, what you just talked about, the fact that it's new for everybody, so it's going to take it could take a while to get confident and good at what you're being asked to do.
Well, I think the one good thing is you have to get to know each other. Right? You think, well, I know everybody. If you're playing there, I went through spring ball with them. But, I mean, there's times in games when there's certain things that certain players say and do and lead, how they lead and things like that you really don't know about it as a fan. You probably do as a coach and things like that. But if you make it a point to make it a team effort, and by that I mean responsibility. We've got to get the ball for the offense. That is period. We've got it's 3 and out, and let's go. And if it isn't 3 and out, it's going to be the next down. We're going to intercept the pass. We're going to knock the ball out. We're going to recover a fumble. We're going to make something happen. And I think that all comes from within each player. And if they understand what their responsibility is to each other and to get that ball for and what your responsibility is to the offense. You know, you got a team, and the offense the same thing. Those guys, they understand. Hey, they work their tails off to get it. We got to get it in the end zone, and so all these simple things, you know, fit together. And you know, a lot of people say, well, that's pretty simple. Yeah, well, it is. You have to do it, and you have to have good leaders, and you have to have guys who demand things on the field of each other, and that'll happen. That'll develop itself as time goes on. But the thing you worry the most about is a lot of times you get a couple guys hurt at one position, and you have to. Sometimes you have to regulate your defense because you can't run something that there's a guy in there that maybe isn't, you know, really ready to go or something like that. And, of course, that's my philosophy was to coach for depth. And I had some things I did at practice that helped me, you know, down the road a lot. And but if you look at the defense and you to put threes and fours in the game and you're ahead 28-0 or 30-0 with 10 minutes or 15 minutes left in the game, and they let them have 2 touchdowns, that kind of that makes the number 1 and 2 guys feel pretty bad because it makes their defense look bad. And they never thought that, though. But that's what a normal person would think. Oh, geez, you know, these guys are scoring. It's 28-14 now, and you know, and the game ain't over till the fat lady sings. So you've got to be protective of each other, and know, you know, the things that are good and bad with certain people. I mean, defenses that are good and bad with certain people in the game.
Coach, real quick before we say goodbye, and thanks for squeezing us in today. How cautious were you about playing young guys, and when did they show or flash to be ready to go? When did you feel good about letting them go swim in the deep end?
Well, first of all, if you had to play them, that solves your problem. You've got to go. But you know, you'll find out some kids are better football players than they've shown when they're on the field playing in a game. They have the ability to do things that you can't do in practice because they still aren't. Their motor still isn't connected. But when they get in the game, sometimes you're going to go, wow, we should have been playing this guy more. And you're going to find that more than not is what's going to happen.
Quickly,
because
Charlie.
These kids are standing on the sideline and want to knock somebody's brains out, and they'll do a lot anything to get in there.
Quickly, Charlie, tell me, about 30 seconds left here. Who were some guys that you coached that were like that? They couldn't get their motor connected until the game started getting going.
Well, there's a lot of guys that are real quiet. I mean, I go back to guys like Rob Stuckey. When he talks to you, you can't hear him. I mean, you know, some guys, you know, if you go meet Terry Keneally and some of these really nice kids, you get them in a game, you better get going because they're going to come after you, everything they got, everything. And that's what happens. You find a lot of these players, George Andrews used to call them the smiling assassin, you know, and things like that. Of course, I had names too, and, you know, we had my name was Coach Run It Again. When the scout team heard me say Run It Again, they knew they were going to get the snot knocked out of them. So.
Coach, we'll talk next Monday as camp continues. Thanks for checking in with us today.
Okay. I'll be here, I hope.
Coach, you go catch some fish, eat some wings.
Thanks for having me, guys. Bye now.
There he is, Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. Joel Wilks going to hit the O-line next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. We've talked a lot about the lines of scrimmage being the key to Nebraska this season and beyond. We welcome in a great member of the Nebraska Pipeline. Joel Wilks joins us. And Joel, good to spend a few minutes with you. Thanks for taking the day out. I know camp season gets you all riled up.
Hey, Chris and Elijah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, this time of year, man, I get a little, I get a little twitchy. I get a little, I feel like I'm going to fight somebody. I just went in the grocery store for a second and an old lady cut me off and I almost forearmed her in the back. I just makes me want to fight this time of year. So I know what those guys are going through.
See, it's the same for me, except in Nebraska, August rolls around. It's not because of fall camp, it's because of the hot and humid weather. I get a little antsy.
You get angry. Yeah.
That's true. You start sweating all the time and you get angry.
Well, to be fair, it wasn't a woman, and she wasn't, or he wasn't that old. So I'm betting on Joel is the point. But we'll dive into the offensive line and what you hope to see, what you want to see with Nebraska this year. Joel, there's a lot of kids that have played a lot of snaps, but they just haven't had the success. Coach Rule and Coach Raiola back for a second year. They want to flip that mentality. Are you optimistic about this line being a strength of the offense and just the team this year?
No, I definitely am. I think they got the right guys running it. I love Coach Raiola and Coach Rule. I haven't met Coach Rule yet, but I love everything he's saying. I think they've got the mentality. And those guys, like you said, they've played a lot of ball. I remember, when I went down there, I wasn't ready. I mean, it took me 3 years to get on the field. So some of those guys got thrown in there so early. I just think they've needed to season a little bit. Now they've played a lot of football, like you said, and, they shouldn't be nervous at all. They should, everything should be slowing down. And now they just gotta play fast and play with that nasty. They got to have a little prick in them and be nasty out there. So that's the only thing that's left, if you ask me. Just that attitude and just playing, just fighting up there and playing hard.
Can tell me about your journey from a confidence standpoint. You're a guy, like you said, I shouldn't say this demeaningly. I'm not 3 years to get on, but that's kind of how it worked with Nebraska. You got built up, you got developed, and then in some instances by year 4, by year 3, guys were ready to go. It was, the Will Shields of the world were pretty rare.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I came into Nebraska at 230, so I wasn't a natural freak size-wise like some of these guys. Like Ben Hart, I was back in Nebraska for the Husker Greats golf tournament, and he was there, and I couldn't believe. I mean, he was just a wall. He's huge, how big he is. I came in at 6'3", 230. I just wasn't ready yet, and it took me a couple years of just getting beat up by Perella and Raymakers and those guys just to toughen me up, and to learn the offense. So it just took some time, and even those guys being bigger, I think it takes some time you got to take your lumps before you can just get thrown in there and start dominating. So, they've had a few years now where they've taken some lumps, they've had time in the system and in the weight room. And I think they're ready to do great things now, and just got to get that mentality, just keep that going.
Joel, what is that mentality and that mindset flip? What does that entail? Is it just, there's one fall camp where you feel a little bit better and it leads into success during the season? Does it take that success on the field? You need to get a matchup in a game that is advantageous to you in order to build that confidence. How do you take that from going and getting beat up to making that a strong point of your game and being a guy who's going to go dominate other people?
For me, I think you just get sick and tired of it. You just at some point you got to say, I'm going to put my foot down. Enough is enough. I mean, I came in with a little chip on my shoulder anyway because I didn't get a scholarship, so I was kind of, just had that fuel burn inside me from day one. But as far as eventually not getting my butt kicked anymore, you just get tired of it and you say enough's enough. And you also spend time in the weight room. I got up to 280. So, put 50 pounds on, it makes you a little bit tougher too. When you're a little bit bigger and stronger, then you have that confidence that, I can squat 600-700 pounds. I know I can, drive somebody off the ball. So it just gives you that confidence too.
Joel Wilks with us, Hail Varsity Radio, previewing the offensive line at JWilks76. Find him on Twitter and Instagram. And, of course, the OG Pipeline. Give that a follow as well. Great event up at the Hail Varsity Club earlier this summer with all your mates. It was good to see you up there. When we talk about offensive identity, what do you think this offense will be? You've got a talent in Sims. You've got receiving weapons. You've got a stable of running backs. But again, it all hinges on that offensive line. Speak to the guards specifically. Nuri is back. We had a chance to sit down with Ethan Piper at Big Ten Media Days. He's reshaped, and he's all sorts of anxious to do work. You've got other guard options. There's nothing in ink position-wise. We think we have an idea. 5, yes, and then you need about 8 to play. So give me your thought here on what you think the bread and butter can be for this offense.
Well, I'm not right there in Nebraska, but just all my buddies that I played with are there, and they say good things about those guys. They say they're strong guys, and they're all capable of doing the job. I really like, kind of just what Rule's saying, just having a balanced offense. But when, it's time to go and you need a couple yards, or it's fourth quarter and you got the lead and you're trying to hold the lead, you got to be able to run the ball. And also when we get in the red zone, I just hate when we get down to the 5-yard line and we start throwing around and then we end up kicking a field goal. It's like, that's the time where that would piss me off as an O-lineman. I'm like, that's the time we, hunker down and we get it in by running the ball. So I'm just hoping they can run when they need to, but they're, want to have a balanced attack as well.
When you look at that trust between coaching staff and offensive line, whenever you get to 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, you know what, we're going to run the ball instead of throwing it around. That trust is a two-way street, right? And that the coaches have to trust the offensive lineman, but the offensive linemen have to be able to trust the coaches that you know what, your play call, it's less about your play call, more about our execution, if you follow what I'm saying here. Tell us about that trust between coaching staff and O-line.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, we had the ultimate trust in Coach Tenneper, Coach Young, and Coach Osborne, whatever they called. But they also knew that, when it came down to it, that, we wanted to run the ball. We were just a physical group, and if they didn't run the ball down there, we would say something to the coaches like, "What are we doing? Let's go. We want to run the ball. Put it on us and let us get 5 yards or whatever it is." So we would have those conversations and that trust. They just had the trust in us, and we trusted them as well. But I think they just knew from practice too. We were just ground and pound and just working people like that. They knew that was the best thing to do down there. But we had that relationship where we could talk and have that trust. But I know if we got down there and start throwing around, Zach or somebody would probably look over and give Coach Osborne the business if you're not running it down there, man.
How did that go exactly?
Zach had no fear. He had a good relationship with Coach Osborne, but he wouldn't bite his tongue if we were in a situation like that. I can just hear him saying it right now.
That's pretty good. Joel Wilks with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Joel, let's spend a minute here on that other side of the ball, the defensive side. And you have kind of a new look for Nebraska, that 3-3-5 that's going to be multiple, and new defensive line coach and Terrence Knighton. Had a chance to hear him today. And you've got some of those guys up front, be it Robinson or Hutmacher, that's really reshaped their body so that the buy-in is there. They're trying to be more explosive and athletic. What's the weirdest defense you went up against, if memory serves, either from a scheme standpoint, or what's maybe the most talented front you got to see on a Saturday?
Well, that makes it tough when you're multiple like that and you're moving guys around and bringing guys from all over the place. I mean, that makes it really tough to prepare for. So I think that's I like that that scheme. You're not going to see this. Teams in the Big Ten are seeing similar stuff every week, and then we do something different where we got guys just coming from everywhere. I kind of like that. I mean, the top teams when I played, Oklahoma had a great front seven, and of course Miami with Warren Sapp and Ray Lewis and those guys, it made it tough. But I'd rather have a defense that you knew where they're going to line up and you just went at it than guys moving all over the place and blitz is coming from everywhere. So that makes it that chaos makes it a little tough.
That surprise factor is difficult to prep for, even though you spend a Monday through Thursday to get ready.
Exactly. That's hard to simulate with the scout team and getting a good look. So I like what they're doing on defense. I think they're going to be flying around, and I hear the players say that it's more like see ball, run to ball, and they're just getting after it and pinning their ears back and going. So I like to hear that too.
Former Husker offensive lineman Joel Wilks with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. And Joel, whenever you're looking at the defense, the offensive line, and building up that physicality, building up that pipeline, if you will, what are you going to be watching for early in the season to see if this offensive line and defensive line as well have made improvements? Are you going to be opening up the stats and looking at yards per rush, rushing yards? Is it an eye test thing? What are you going to be watching for in order to see if those two groups have improved in 2023?
Well, the first thing, I just want to see get off. I want to see those guys getting off the ball and not catching people and not just shielding guys. I want to see them flying off the ball and getting that initial, 2-yard pop off the ball, just punching people and exploding off the line. And then just watching the finish, just seeing if there's guys on the ground, just seeing if they're getting pancakes and finishing guys. Those are the two biggest things. Just seeing that get off and then finish somebody. When you don't be satisfied with just a stalemate, keep your feet going until, a second past the whistle and finish somebody. Put them, want to put somebody in the turf every time and break their will. That's the kind of attitude you want every time.
Joel, there's been a lot of talk about the fourth quarter, and Nebraska's been in so many tight games over the last 3 years, and that's life in the Big Ten. And to you, I wanted to get your take on what made you guys such a great fourth quarter team. It wasn't close a lot of the time, but if it was close, you could put that 4-minute offense in.
I think it was just the practices and the conditioning. We were in such good shape, and Coach Osborne always preached, it doesn't matter what happens in the first, second, third quarter. We're just, just giving them blows and blows and blows. And then eventually we're going to get the knockout punch in the fourth quarter. So you just wear them down is what we did. Initially, you saw in Miami, Warren Sapp and those guys getting in the backfield a little bit, making plays, but we just kept coming and wore them down. And then you just knock them out in the fourth quarter. So that's what we always did. I mean, the fourth quarter, we always just know we own the fourth quarter. That was just our motto. We own the fourth quarter, and we get to the fourth, and we'll finish the deal out. So that's the mentality they got to have. You can't pucker up in the fourth quarter and get scared and get nervous. You got to say this is our time, and I'm hoping too that those O linemen up front are just the alpha dogs on the team. You can't be passive, and those guys got to be the guys telling everybody that this shit's going to happen with us. So I hope those guys have that leadership and or have that ability to do that on the team and just be the ultimate leaders up there and take the thing over.
Was that a gradual thing with the pipeline? Because how many seasons together did you guys play? Was it 2 years? Was it 3? Y'all came up together,
yeah.
But by the senior season, by your junior season, was it just kind of known that, this is the time, this is the finishing touch / punch, so to speak?
Yeah, by the time I got up there, we had my junior, senior year, so 2 years for all of us together. I mean, Rob and Zach saw the field earlier than that. Brendan had Will Shields ahead of him. And but, yeah, for the last 2 years that we were together. And just, you just build that by spending time together in the weight room and on the field and just holding each other accountable. If anybody, had an off day, you'd hear about it from the other guys. And we just all held each other to that standard. So when you get in those situations in the fourth quarter, you just know you can count on those guys and you're not going to let those guys down.
Joel, one of the things that Coach Roll talked about at Media Days last week was earning respect in Nebraska, getting back to where they were in terms of earning respect. And one of the phrases that he used was getting Nebraska back to a point where they were feared. And I want you to take me back to those national championship seasons. From body language or from interactions on the field, did you know when another team was fearful of what Nebraska brought? Or when the fourth quarter rolled around, did you ever see that in your opponents, that they were fearful of what Nebraska was in the fourth quarter?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, we went in, I think teams came into Memorial Stadium back then and knew what they were going to get. They're going to get a butt kicking. A lot of the teams, they'd come in there and intimidated, and we've lost that. Teams have come into our stadium that aren't even Power 5 teams and beat us. So we've kind of lost that mystique in our stadium. We need to get that back. But I remember one game specifically, it was Pacific, and the starters only played 15 snaps because we scored every time we got the ball. But I remember the first play we walked up there and they had a defensive lineman that was he had to be like 220, 230, just little guy. He's in his stance, just shivering, just shaking, like trying to get all psyched up and all this stuff. And we walked up and literally just started laughing. We're like, are you kidding me? This is the best you guys got. And we just freaking tossed him 10 yards and we played 15 plays and that was it. But you could tell that kid he was scared. He wasn't ready for Memorial Stadium that day.
They dropped their football program shortly after. I don't know if they're having anything to do with that Saturday. And how many hot dogs did you guys hammer on the sideline?
We literally did. Zach called over the hot dog guy and we started ordering hot dogs. And then Coach Osborne halftime chewed us out for doing that and said we can't eat on the sidelines.
We got you one, Coach. Come on, man. Joel Wilks.
We're bored over here, man.
Yeah, a couple more minutes. Hail Varsity Radio, part of the Husker Pipeline, talking Nebraska offensive line for 2023. Is there a player you've got circled, Joel, that you're projecting really big things from on the offensive line? Is there a guy you're keyed in on?
Well, I hear Rob talk about Teddy Prohaska quite a bit. Like he should be, probably our best guy potentially if he's healthy. So I'd like to see him, get in there and be healthy and just let it go and cut loose and all that stuff. So kind of be watching him, but all those guys, I'm really rooting for the whole group, and just hope they come out with some that swagger and that attitude, just to be nasty pricks out there. I want to see all 5 of them, those 5 starters do that. But he's a guy I'll definitely keep my eye on just from hearing what Rob's had to say about him.
I think it nasty, and I think your group, the offensive line, flipping it around with, and we talked to you, we talked to Dr. Rob, and 2 names always come up, 3 names really. Christian, you mentioned Perella, and when Perella was here, we had a chance to get in touch with him quite a bit, and then Raymakers. What is the mystique / legend of those D tackles you guys had to go against? Yeah, they were really, really talented. So were you guys, but how did they prepare you? I mean, what was that level of nasty you speak of?
Honestly, they just on the field were not right upstairs. Those guys were nuts. They were totally nuts. I mean, they were just crazy, and you go up there and you just didn't know what you were going to get into because they're wild. You didn't know what they were going to do. And they were just the 3 of the toughest guys. I mean, probably the 3 toughest guys I ever went against, and that's game included and everything. I mean, they're just, big, strong, didn't feel pain, just crazy in the head, That's what we always said. Those guys were just nuts. So they prepared you because you knew going into a game, there's no way you're going to find anybody that crazy or tough. I mean, like that time, one time Perella broke his finger, his bone sticking out of his finger during a game, and Sully came over and taped it up, and he ran back in there. I mean, his bone is sticking out of his hand. That guy was nuts. He didn't feel any pain. I mean, so going against those 3 guys, it just prepared you for anything you'd see on a Saturday.
When it comes to not being right upstairs, you mentioned the fracture that had bone sticking out. Would they try and literally push your buttons on those practice days, Monday through Thursday, where they give you a little extra after the whistle? Would they try and set you off?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, Perella and Raymakers one time jumped me. I think I've told this story before. I was a scout team guy, but they had enough of me fighting, and they double teamed me and just beat the crap out of me in front of my whole group of scout team guys. I mean, they were just laughing as they're just wailing on me. So, they taught me a lot, those guys. But I'm friends with them to this day. I mean, off the field, they're the greatest guys on the planet. I'm just great friends with them. But on the field, they just had that switch that they could go to.
That's insane.
They buy you a beer afterwards, at least.
Say that again. I missed the end part.
Did they buy you a beer at least afterwards?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I saw Raymakers at Zach's induction into the College Football Hall of Fame recently here, and we told some good stories and had some beers, and they're just great guys. But yeah, we had some wars in practice down in the pit. That's for sure.
Last thought from me here before we get you out, and Schmidt might have some more for you, but I want to get into, as you talk about development and being a scout team guy going up against the starters, a guy that a lot of people were impressed with on that offensive line in the spring was Gunnar Gatula, and we talked about him a bit yesterday. What do you think an ideal true freshman year is for Gunnar Gatula with how thin this offensive line may be headed into the season? Do you think you'd like to see him get some play time in that offensive line? Would it be better to be a guy that can focus on his craft and really just bring it in practice every single day and not have to worry about Saturdays? What do you think an ideal year one is for Gunnar Gatula? Because I think a lot of people saw that potential in him during that spring game.
Yeah, I've heard some great things about him too. I mean, ideally, I'm sure all these kids coming in now want to play. I mean, I didn't even have that. That wasn't even on my radar. I was just coming in trying to develop. So, I mean, I think that'd be good for him just to develop if he could, if they're, if they can stay healthy up front there, and he can just take a year to develop and learn from those guys and stay in the weight room and save that eligibility for when he's, a little more mature and bigger and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, if he's good enough, I'm sure they'll get him on the field if they need him. But, I've heard great things about him, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in the future here.
Joel Wilks with us, Husker standout, part of the pipeline, national champion, and joining us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Joe, before we let you go, tell us what this fall looks like for you with your kids in the high school football season.
Yeah, we just started ramping it up this week, so I'm getting crazy busy and getting everything lined up. I've got my middle son's going to be an 8th grader, so I got 1 more year coaching youth football, and then I'm also coaching with the Varsity, the O-line with the Varsity at Lake Oswego High School, and my oldest son's going to be a freshman this year. So he's getting up into the high school ranks. So it's going to be really fun. I'm going to be watching a lot of huddle and just busy as I'll get it. They roped me into being the equipment guy for youth football, so I got the equipment handout coming out this weekend. So it's just a really busy time, but I'm trying to enjoy every minute of it because I know it goes fast. And before you know it, Cash will be a senior and getting ready to go off to college. And I finally converted him. He's finally turned into a Husker fan. He was a Duck for the longest time, and now he's finally, I don't know what did it, but he's a Husker now, and he wants to go to Matt Rule's camp next summer, and he's all in. So we'll see how it goes.
That's awesome, and congrats to you. And I know that's special, being able to be around your boys and coaching them. That's awesome.
Yep. And Joel, quickly, when you talk about being the equipment manager, are you giving the kids neck rolls? What's your thought on the neck roll in football?
Kids don't even know what those are anymore. They want the smallest shoulder pads they can get. It's weird. Yeah, I had the old cowboy collar and all that stuff, man, but the biggest shoulder pads I could find. And now I checked my son out with some pads, and he's like, "Dad, these things are huge." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They want the smallest ones possible. It's just so different.
Joel, you take care. Hope to see you this fall. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Thanks, guys. Great to see you.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, podcast available for you shortly. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Subscribe to Hail Varsity Radio. Subscribe to the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. The digital video version available in a bit. Replay for you. Also, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Big thanks to everyone who jumped in and contributed into the chat. We'll spend more time tomorrow. Evan Bland, Mike Babcock joins us as we'll talk more Husker football. Plenty of audio we didn't get to, so if you want to hear from the Polar Bear or Coach Pot Roast, we'll have a little sampling of that tomorrow, potentially. Many thanks to Charlie McBride, Joel Wilks, Mitch Sherman today. We'll get caught up with Searles later in the week, his thoughts on the O-line as well. Reminder to get buckled up, use your seatbelt. It saves lives, prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up, a message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. And Elijah, it is taco night. We are going to go get tacos and beer. At least I'll have the beer part. Hard shell, soft shell, or some sort of monstrosity combination.
Oh, I mean, the monstrosity combination. Like,
where you have your soft wrapped around your hard shell.
With cheese in between.
Right.
Great. Phenomenal. Also, a real pain if you're doing it at home. I save that for the experts over at Taco Bell.
Can I say the best tacos ever, and I will, as coaches say, jump on the table for this. We had barge tacos, all right? And barge tacos were great. Uncle Willie and my grandpa out in western Nebraska, they had a barge. We'd jump out, we'd fish. My brother and I'd get hung up all the time. Grandpa should have threw us in, didn't. And then they had a little hot plate, and they'd put a little oil in, and we'd just do tacos on the barge.
Oh, I see.
It was great. And they always would take the tortilla, and they'd do corn, and then they do flour. And the flour was so flaky where it'd puff up, it'd get a little char to it, but it was still flexible.
Yep.
And those are incredible, like homemade onion, peppers, jalapeno, some salsa, the ground beef. It was incredible. I wish I could do barge tacos as well as I had them on the barge, although I'd do them at home. Mm-hmm. But got the welcomed text, "Where are we going to dinner?" The bad signal from the wife. And I'm like, well, let's go do taco. Yeah,
Taco Tuesday.
Got to do Taco Tuesday.
Okay, here's the thing. My thing with tacos is if I'm doing it at home, I might as well just make a quesadilla, right? Get the two-shell action going.
See,
get a little extra cheese
got
in there.
thrown
It's all
out.
melty. I love quesadillas if I'm doing it at home. If I'm going out, the street tacos are great everywhere.
Those are money.
One thing I will stand up on a soapbox is for $1 at Taco Bell, they have spicy potato soft tacos. And you would think, why would I want this? There's no meat in there. It is fantastic.
It's glorious.
It's like these deep fried potato chunks. They have a chipotle sauce. It used to have this thing called a Baja sauce, which the only thing that they used for that Baja sauce on the menu was the spicy potato soft taco. Obviously, cost cutting happened. They had to cut the Baja sauce out. You can still get it in stores. But the spicy potato soft taco, fantastic. I will never get tired of them. At home, though, if I'm doing tacos, I'm just going to go put 2 shells together with all my ingredients in between and make it a quesadilla.
So, confession here. I once hammered 7 gorditas.
Haven't we all? 1 a.m. on a Saturday night, you never know what's going to happen.
Carson, we're going to the Bill. Talk to you tomorrow at 4. Thanks.